Hello, everyone, and thank you for listening to my Grads 2020 presentation. My name is Luke Weidner, and the title of my presentation is Enhancing Engineering Geological Reconnaissance and Analysis Using Machine Learning and Remote Sensing. That's kind of a mouthful, so I wanted to break it down a little bit. We're working with the field of engineering geology, which is tasked with understanding the impact of earth materials and geologic processes on engineered structures and human development more generally. Reconnaissance and analysis tasks of engineering geology might include site investigation, modeling of geologic processes, and also design of mitigation alternatives. And we're going to perform these tasks using the tools of machine learning and remote sensing. So remote sensing is without a doubt transforming engineering geology as a profession, and we have some examples of how this is the case. First, we can inspect and monitor inaccessible or dangerous areas in a much higher detail, such as with the Devil's Slide on the coast of California. We can measure geomorphic change in an unprecedented detail. For example, this is a rockfall in an eroded area, and we can calculate the volume of that rockfall with very high accuracy. Thirdly, we can drastically increase the efficiency of hazard and risk assessment over large areas. And this is an example of a rail corridor in Canada where indices have been extracted from a remote sensing data set in order to assess the hazard. So the problem of the current research is that three-dimensional data are difficult and very time-consuming to process and interpret and incorporate into engineering designs. So, for example, this this might be a pretty picture, but this took 10 hours for somebody to manually label in order to filter out the vegetation. And there's a lack of tools that are specifically tailored to geological applications in order to provide guidance and quick, ready-to-use tools that can be incorporated into the types of analyses that are used for engineering design. Some of the models that are being developed, however, are what are referred to sometimes as black box models, which are difficult to interpret and may, because of that, be ill-suited for incorporation into engineering designs. So the objectives of the current research are twofold. First, we want to develop an automated point cloud interpretation tool, and specifically we want to validate them for the application of rock slope monitoring. Secondly, we want to compare complex machine learning-based solutions with other methods for accomplishing the same tasks that might be considered simpler or more thoroughly validated in the literature, for example. So the methodology that we're using to first develop an automated approach for our machine learning, for our workflow is as follows. On the left here, we have our rock slope data processing workflow in which we collect LiDAR scans, we apply some processing algorithms, and we calculate change between adjacent scans in order to calculate failure volumes, estimate deformation, and use that to inform hazard and risk assessments. In order to incorporate an automated interpretation workflow here, which is mainly used to filter vegetation and talus, we have two main steps. First, we're going to manually label a large database of points to use as training data, and we categorize points as being vegetation, soil, talus, or bedrock. For these labeled points, we then calculate multi-scale geometric dimensionality features, and by dimensionality, I mean the local neighborhood of points around any given point is characterized as being either one-dimensional, two-dimensional, or three-dimensional in nature, and these geometric descriptors give an idea of the general shape of the point cloud. We combine these geometric descriptors with the training data and use it as training data for a random forest machine learning algorithm. Once we have a trained algorithm, we can apply that algorithm to any other of the point clouds that we've collected in our rock slope monitoring time series. So we have a couple of examples of what these data look like. So this is on the left, we have a colorized LiDAR point cloud collected in Morrison, Colorado. And we turn on the automated classification output where the colors are indicating are of different classes, and we can see how bedrock is easily distinguishable from the variety of different species of vegetation and soil and whatnot. The second example is collected by a UAV of a much larger area, and we can see in a similar fashion how bedrock areas and vegetation are easily distinguishable after the automated outputs have been calculated. So we can assess the quantitative accuracy of our interpretation results in two ways, through time and also essentially through space. On the left, we're looking at classifying the same slope through time in a sequence of scans. And we're also comparing a machine learning classification approach, which is with a simpler approach we're referring to as masking. In a masking approach, the slope is assumed to be not moving, and we apply a static template through time that is unchanging. We can see that the machine learning classification accuracy is actually quite similar to the masking classification accuracy. And so in this case, we conclude because masking is a more stable classification technique, we conclude that machine learning is typically not necessary for through time classification. And we can safely assume that the slope is stationary and apply some sort of static template. In contrast, if you want to quickly classify a large number of sites, applying a static mask is not feasible. We found that increasing the variety of training data, moving from left to right on this right plot over here, we're more likely to have good performance on a completely new site. So this shows us that the generalization of these general classes of vegetation, soil, talus, and bedrock is possible using a single classifier. There are still instances, however, when a machine learning approach can fail. And here we have two examples of where we had unexpected results. On the left, small shrubs are incorrectly labeled as rock, which is red in this output. And this is because small shrubs on vertical cliffs particularly are underrepresented or mislabeled often in the training database. On the right, we have a forest road with some taller trees in the background, but those tall trees are also labeled as rock in the red due to their vertical orientation. And more importantly, this species of tree is not represented in any of the training sites. So there are two ways we've explored for mitigating this problem of needing very high quality training data and the influence that training data can have on the generalization. First, we can understand the confidence of the classifier by looking at the output probabilities. So we can identify areas where the confidence of the classifier is relatively low and perhaps have a better understanding of why classification results are confused, for example, in these two areas here, where talus and bedrock are confused. Secondly, we can add new training points to the classifier, which is in essence forcing the classifier to learn from the particular slope and features of that slope that we're interested in. And in particular, by adding training points with initially low confidence, those points have a larger impact on the resulting model, and that helps us expedite the training process by only adding training points that are going to have a large impact. And so, in conclusion, we can see that automated classification using machine learning tools is definitely feasible for engineering geology applications. However, there is no machine learning panacea that is going to solve every classification problem for any site and any project. And this is mostly because geologic data are so spatially and temporally heterogeneous And that is the reason why generalized classification has all of these unexpected results. Finally, the best classifier is going to be one that is tailored to the site of interest by an experienced engineer who knows the ins and outs of these methods. So that's all I have. This concludes the presentation. I thank you for listening.